We also spoke with newly elected Congresswoman Carolyn Bourdeaux, the Democrat representing parts of Gwinnett and Forsyth counties. She defended her vote this week for impeaching President Trump.
Why do you think the step was necessary when the president only had days left in his term?
Our democratic institutions only work if people of good faith, of ethics, make them work. And ethics and good faith requires recognizing the results of an election, not trying to coerce people into illegally overturning the results of an election. Good faith and ethics requires supporting the peaceful transfer of power. And we saw the president absolutely fail in this. He incited a violent mob to attack the Capitol to try to disrupt the certification of the election. When asked to deploy the National Guard to defend the Capitol, he refused to do that. So there was just no question in my mind that there has to be accountability for what he did.
The Senate will not begin an impeachment trial until President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in. Politico now reports Senator Lindsey Graham sent a letter to Minority Leader Chuck Schumer today asking for a vote to dismiss the impeachment trial, saying it will only delay the healing for our country.